Didn't say that. That's what I thought, yeah. Yeah, I didn't go here. Didn't say it was going to take me well for me.
Good evening, everyone. Starting right on time. Madam Deputy Clerk, can we do roll call?
Councillor Claude McIntyre.
Present.
Elaine McDonald. Present. Sid Gardner.
Here.
Dean Hollingsworth. Carrie Lynn Hebert. Is out. Councillor Glenn Brandt.
Present.
Todd Bennett.
Here.
Justin Towndale.
Present.
Eric Bertrand.
Present.
And Madam Mayor.
Is on. I just want to highlight that I spoke to Councillor DePel this morning, and his mother is in the hospital. He is at her bedside right now, so he sends his regrets, and he wanted me to let everybody know that. Otherwise, he would absolutely have been here. So I want to welcome you all to the special council meeting. It's good to see so many people here. I hear there are people here who have never been in the council chambers. Welcome. There are some first-timers. I see heads nodding. So maybe this is not exactly the best way to start off, but it's actually okay for people to be here, because this is a business meeting. This is how we run business with the City of Cornwall. We have city council meetings, so this is a regular council meeting in the sense that we will proceed the way we always do at council meetings, which means that there's an introduction, there's a motion, and then there's debate. And of course, it's a public meeting, so you're all very welcome here. This is a transparent process. You can be here every second Monday if you want, and we would welcome you, because that's how transparent this process is. The public doesn't get a right to speak at these meetings. These are business meetings, and so we don't speak at these meetings, but we then can talk about opportunities where you will be allowed to speak. And that's part of what we want to discuss tonight, is how to get feedback on this topic. So I just wanted to give you that sort of introduction to how a council meeting proceeds. The next thing I want to tell you is that last week, as you know, we made a decision to stop allowing open-air burning. And we got reaction. Lots of reaction. And that's okay. In fact, I've had conversations this week about how to get items on the agenda, how to come make presentations to council, and that's a good thing. I see that as the public getting organized in a peaceful, respectful manner and becoming part of the process. So I appreciate all of those of you who took time to contact us and to be here tonight. It's greatly appreciated. So I also want to tell you a personal story. So last week was a big week in terms of feedback and information. And I went home Friday night, and my neighbor was in his yard, and he called me over. So my neighbor Dennis has a beautiful fire pit, and he has fires there regularly every week during the summer. He burns really clean stuff. He makes sure that the fire is put out at the end of the night. I see him out there putting it out before he goes to bed. I never have had any worry with that. He has a double lot, has never bothered neighbors around. So when he came up to me, he said, "So Bernadette, this thing, is this about me?" It was tongue-in-cheek, maybe halfway. So we started to talk about what it means, right, to be neighbors and to live close together and to use our property in ways that we see fit. Using it for family time, using it to gather around with friends. So we had that conversation. And as we were talking, another neighbor joined us, Vic, on the other side of me. And so the three of us had a good chat. And that's what I want this to be about, a conversation between neighbors. Because this is not just a town, it is a city with people who live close together or not, with people who have permits or not, with people who burn fires or not. This is about having a conversation between neighbors. And I want to make sure that this council gets this right. If we're about to make any big changes, I want us to get it right. So this special council meeting is about having that conversation amongst ourselves, and then we'll push it out there to make sure that we hear from you. Okay? So those are my words of introduction, and now I'm going to turn to council to see if we want to proceed with any kind of discussion. Councillor Abad.
Are you looking for motions, Madam Mayor?
I am always looking for motions, so I will leave it up to council.
May I introduce a motion?
Councillor Abad, go ahead.
Thank you. I move a motion that the council direct administration to conduct public engagement on this issue before returning the open-air burning bylaw. If I have a seconder.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Towndale? Okay. So the motion is to direct administration to go out and conduct public consultation before coming back with a bylaw. Everybody clear on that motion? Okay, maybe I'll turn to the CAO to just sort of talk about the status of where we are now, and then I'll go to debate. So right now, as we stand, where are we with the process?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So following the report that we had on council at the last council meeting, I think we certainly recognize there's been a tremendous amount of feedback generated in the community, social media, Facebook, emails. And so through all of this, we'd like to take an opportunity to pause and give the community an opportunity to participate in some open house sessions, so the fire chief can maybe...
Can't hear nothing.
Can't hear anything.
Sorry about that. So we'd like to provide, the community an opportunity to participate in some open house sessions. We would like to do that prior to coming back to council with the bylaw. So based on the report that we had on the last meeting, we would typically bring back the bylaw at the next council meeting on September the 23rd. We will not be doing that if this motion passes with council. We will allow for some public engagement, and then following that, we'll put together a summary report, bring it back to council along with the bylaw at that time.
So can I take questions from council? Councillor McDonald.
Thank you. So, through you, Madam Mayor, to administration, what specifically have you got in mind? Like, do we have dates set and number of open houses? Is it going to be like a traveling road show, or what are we going to do here? Or maybe that hasn't been decided yet.
So at this point in time, we also are waiting for certainly a motion from council. We have talked about venues. I think we're thinking about doing it at the salons at the Civic Complex. We'd like to have it on different dates, maybe an afternoon session, maybe an evening session. So I think that I'm going to refer it over to Chief Voisin. He could provide a little bit more feedback, but Chief.
Certainly through you, Madam Mayor. I think we'd be very happy to look at all kinds of options in terms to be as flexible as possible, allow enough time for folks to be able to plan to attend one or many of the sessions. We've had some discussions in-house, and I think we'd like to, in light of the fact that I think there's an educational component, but there's also a listening component to this. We'd like to allow for enough time for two-way conversations and interactions, and then we would take down all of this information and bring it back to council.
Councillor McDonald? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I guess when dates are determined, it will probably be sent out on the city's social media, or how will we communicate with people?
So through you, Madam Mayor, when dates are set, I do not foresee the dates being prior to next Monday. We'd want to make sure that we had ample time to notify the community, put it on our webpage, advertise it in local media, and make sure that everybody's aware.
Thank you.
Councillor Bennett?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to the Chief. When we're doing the
it's great that we're going to get the public, get their opinions, but could we also get comparators with other municipalities that either have it or don't, reasons for, reasons against, so we have other communities to compare ourselves to?
Absolutely. We have ways to, obviously, we can pull where they are in terms of what kind of bylaw they use, but we can also query some probably comparable sized municipalities and talk about how they got to where they are and the challenges that came with that. Absolutely. I'll take that.
Thank you.
Councillor Gardner?
Thank you very much. I'm going to support the recommendation that's being made by the motion by our colleague. We've also always prided ourselves on dealing with the public and making sure that we got out there with the public, and we didn't do it. We made a mistake this time, and I also have another comment I want to make, and that's more, not an apology so much as I talked about gas fireplaces at the last meeting. The problem is with that on the news since that time, I've seen where fireplaces, the gas fireplaces have been exploded, or the gas has come out and people have died. So if we're going to talk about gas fireplaces, we better make sure that we know what we're buying or we know what we're selling, because my son had one, and the first thing I did was call him and say, make sure you've got the right setup, or else you'll end up in the same boat. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Bourgeois?
Yep. First thing, in the documents for this meeting, it has me voting for this. I voted against it. It also has me voting against it, just a point of order more than anything. But
Okay.
I just want to ask a few questions, I suppose, in terms of this process. So we did pass a bylaw, which I voted against, but we did pass we passed a recommendation.
Yep.
After this feedback is received, what is the process? We're pushing the bylaw conversation next Monday. We are not? But this is still coming back next Monday?
No, you're pushing it back. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. We're pushing that conversation about the bylaw itself until further notice. But we did pass something, and I want to know what happens with that. What is the process of changing that, if that is the will of the community?
So I'll turn to the CEO first.
So, through you, Madam Mayor, procedurally, it would depend on how we bring that back. So, council has made a motion, or council has passed a motion that we are currently following. Right, so if you want to change that motion or reverse that motion, do you want to talk about notice of motion? Do you want to talk about a 2/3 reconsideration of that decision? Depends on how you want to proceed with that. So,
This is less for me than for everybody else in the room. So I was opposed to it, and I will bring it back as often as I can. But I just mean, we did pass a recommendation that we ban it. And so to have a meeting and discuss this bylaw and how to word the bylaw, a ban is what this council has recommended. How do I make a recommendation that is less than a ban without changing that motion? Or if I have to change that motion, how do I go about that?
so through you, Madam Mayor, you would have to change that motion. You could provide a notice of motion to council. That notice of motion is voted if the notice of motion is provided to council, then it's a notice that it will be talked about at a future following meeting.
Thank you. So essentially what I'm getting at is the conversation moving forward is about how we can word a bylaw that adheres to what council is thinking, but also what the community is sending feedback. It's not just, it's not black and white. We have room to negotiate in between here.
Nothing is black and white. Life is not black and white. So
Passing a recommendation
life is
banning
not, so tonight, if this motion passes,
We are directing administration to go and do public engagement before they come back with a bylaw. So this next period will be a period of time where there might be open houses. We're not sure exactly what this is going to look like, but we're going to go and get feedback. We're also going to share information, because I don't think everybody's on the same page in terms of information out there. So we're going to do that, try and get that right, get some feedback, get some ideas. That stuff, information, is then going to inform the drafting of the bylaw. The bylaw's then going to come back here for debate.
Thank you. That's exactly the answer I was looking for.
But if you want to make changes, then there is a procedural process, Councillor Bergeron.
That was answered, so I appreciate that.
No problem. So I have Councillor Hollingsworth and then Councillor Grant. Councillor Hollingsworth.
One quick question, Your Worship, with regards to the actual motion. It reads, engage our residents to participate in public information sessions that allow for input and education on the proposed changes. Now, the way that reads to me, just so that I know what I'm voting for here, the way it seems to feel is that we're going to have public meetings, and what we are going to do is we are going to extol the virtues of the potential new bylaw and try to tell everybody how this is a good idea. That's how it reads through the educate and propose changes. Now,
Councillor Abel made a different motion. A different motion.
okay, can I get that motion read back so I know exactly what I'm
Sure
debating
thing.
and crystal clear on this?
That council direct administration to go to the public for information prior to bringing back the bylaw before council for adoption.
Okay, so then, that being said, we're going to get feedback from the public, and they're going to say we like it or we don't like it, and we're going to adjust our bylaw as per public meetings, is that?
We're not sure what's going to happen, because that's going to be a conversation amongst ourselves once again. So we're going to get engagement from the community. That's going to come back, inform the process of drafting a bylaw. The bylaw has to come back here and be debated.
Well, then let me go at it this way. Let's pretend we have our public meetings, and there is clearly a very distinctive majority who don't like the version that we talked about last Monday night. Does that mean we're going to be debating a different version, or, yeah, we had feedback and this is still what we're doing?
We don't have a version yet of the bylaw.
Well, okay, whatever the recommendation was, I guess, is the framework tradition, Your Worship, that we're working with, right? I mean, the majority of council voted for a recommendation that said this is what we think we would like to do, and I think it says something to the effect of, if I read it correctly on the back page, and I'm hoping I get this right, council corporation acts follows, no person shall set, maintain, or permit be set, maintain, solid fuel, open air burning except authorized in the bylaw. So that's essentially what we supported last week. So, like, is that still kind of where we're coming from, or now that's not really what we're doing? I'm just trying to understand what's going on, Your Worship. So what is it we're actually doing here? Please, if I could get an answer.
Sure. So last week, we made a decision, that recommendation
Yep.
that you've just read.
Yep.
We didn't do any public consultation prior to passing that recommendation.
Where is that?
So that's what this meeting is about, to make sure that administration goes and does that public consultation before they come back with a bylaw.
Okay, so let me direct a question then to the CEO. Assuming we have our public consultation, right? So we talk to whomever, however we get feedback, we've probably all gotten calls already, so be it. But we've currently, the majority of council said this is what we want. Majority of council said that. So what happens after the public meetings? Is this what we're debating now, or we like, I guess the point is, Your Worship, when a majority of council votes in favor of a recommendation, that's the recommendation we're operating under when we write a bylaw. And you can't just arbitrarily reconfigure that based on a public meeting unless council says, yes, we want to reconfigure it. I'm just trying to figure out how this works.
So, this is 2019,
Okay?
and this mayor called a special council
Yes.
meeting to get this process right.
Okay?
That's what this is about. If others have not done it that way, so be it. Me, this is how I do it.
Well, I'm just trying to follow the rules, your worship, that's all.
So am I.
Okay, that's fine. I probably won't support it then, because I'm not feeling very comfortable with how it's working, and I don't feel like I understand how it's supposed to work, so I'll probably not support the motion.
That's fair, Councillor Hollingsworth. I have Councillor Grant, next, and then Councillor Towndale.
Thank you. Since this is informal, I'll sit down.
That's fine, Councillor Grant.
First of all, the bylaw can't be contrary to the direction from council, so there can be additional information in the bylaw that could influence people, how they look at it. Is there new information? Is there whatever the case may be? But in this particular case, we can't make people feel that just because there's a public meeting, that there's going to be a change in direction. I don't like trying to fool anybody.
Right.
There was a direction from council. There has to be overwhelming information brought for that to change. So, but public input is good. I know I've received it from both sides, plenty, and that's good. But what I'm hearing more is from the open fires than from the, and it's only in the last couple of days that I've gotten a lot of reaction from people who are saying thank you for what you did. So let's, to me, this information meeting is good, and there may be some modification, but I don't want to fool anybody and think they will, because the direction from council is clear.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Councillor Towndale?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll remain seating as well because it is an informal meeting.
That's fine.
Well, I agree with Councillor Gardner in the sense that we did make a mistake on this one, in my personal opinion. We should have done public consultation, because this is a bylaw that affects everybody in the city, regardless if they have a fire pit or not. And in my 5 years in council, I've never encountered this level of discussion, or I would say outrage as well. Everywhere I go, I'm encountering it. I had someone stop me on the street the other day while I was driving, pulled up next to me at a red light, started talking about it. So, I mean, this is unprecedented. But I think this, we need to have this public consultation. I wish I'd come before, which it should have, but I look forward to it. And I think the presence today, everyone in the room kind of shows you that there's a lot of people who have something to say. So I'm hopeful that not only will we do the open house, but we will take into consideration, like we have in the past, online comments that are either emailed in directly to the clerk or using the form online on our website and through social media, because we have pulled those before. Not everyone can make it to the open house. And I think all those comments are still valid. And I think we really need to listen to those. So I'm hoping that we'll see that as well, and we'll see that compiled in the final report. And when we discuss the bylaw, that'll be in front of us for us to reference.
Thank you, Councillor Towndale. Councillor Yabba?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll have to agree with some of my colleagues who said this was a mistake not doing public consultation before the vote, so I echo those comments. And I'm glad that we have the opportunity to turn around and engage the community, as much as they've already been very engaged over the last week. And as for the process itself, the questions there, what I imagine is we'll go out, we'll do engagement, we'll talk to, hundreds of more people, and then the report will come back to us before the bylaw, correct? And we'll have an opportunity at that point to discuss the public consultation and the report on that, and there will be an opportunity to possibly change the bylaw, whether it be completely different or some kind of compromise. And during public consultation, I certainly encourage compromise ideas, because there is an issue here, right? And we want to try to make as many people happy as possible while still considering the folks that are impacted by this. So I'd love to hear sort of the middle of the road on this, and then the bylaw can come back after we've receive the report on engagement. So I'm not concerned about the process. I know it'll be done properly. I realize we should have probably deferred this last time. And I may have mentioned it before the meeting that I was probably going to defer it, and then we didn't. So, that's on me there. But anyway, in the meantime, so it might be a month before we see this again, maybe longer, if we give a lot of opportunity for input, which I hope we do. what do the residents do if they want a permit? Are we accepting them? Because the bylaw has not been approved. However, we have made there was a vote to create a new bylaw, but the bylaw has not been approved, which means the recommendation has not been rolled out, and we're still operating on the old bylaw. So in the meantime, can residents still go and get a permit that will last 3 years, regardless of what the decision is here? May I have a response there?
Fair question. I'll go to the CAO first, and then she'll direct the answer.
We'll direct that to the fire chief, please.
So I'm hopefully not going to look too bad by deferring that as well, but I can answer, we've been taking in applications, but we've also been concerned with the question of where are we in the process, and I'm going to ask Mr. Clark to maybe clarify that. He's been in discussions with the city's legal team as well.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Clark?
Thank you. So with the rescinding of the previous bylaw and without having a new bylaw, we fall into the provincial legislative ground of no open fires. So with that said, we wouldn't be able to issue new permits.
Okay, so that's the legal opinion. Okay. Thank you. I think that's all my comments for now. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. So Councillor Mack hasn't spoken, and then I'll go to a next round. Councillor Mack.
The one thing I've learned about through this is how many people in this town have breathing problems. I didn't realize. Also learned that sometimes they don't come forward because, as one lady told me on Friday night, that her neighbors are great neighbors. She doesn't want to cause any trouble with them, but she has asthma, and they have fires Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday night. And she has to close her windows, can't go to her deck, and she doesn't want to say anything to them because she doesn't want to get them upset. So we got that completely. So when it comes to your open houses, you're going to find, I can tell you right now that there's going to be many, many more people saying we want fire pits than people saying no, because some of the people with the breathing problems, the ones that are really affected, and it is a health problem. Our medical officer of health told us that. I wouldn't want to rely on the results of taking count of who's for it and who's against it, because if 600 people are for it and 100 people can't go outside and have breathing problems, I think that outweighs the people who think they should have a fire. I'd like to know the solutions. Somebody said we should come up with a solution. I asked them what the solution, well, I don't know what the solution is. I don't know what the solution could be. If you got somebody in the neighborhood who can't enjoy the outdoors, has to shut their windows, when lady said her smoke alarm went off. It was so bad. Enforcement.
Okay.
Enforcement is a non-issue. The police department can't enforce this. The fire department bylaw office isn't available after 5 o'clock. I also know there's a lot of people in this town who have permits and have open fires. Anyway, we'll have the open houses, we're going back, and we're going to say, boy, a lot of people out there are really opposed to the bylaw, and I'm not going to be surprised at all at that, but there are a lot of people who really, it becomes a health issue, and that's where I'm looking at it from.
Thank you, Councillor Mack.
When somebody says, well, just tell them to shut their window, that's pretty cruel.
All right, Councillor McDonald?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks for the second opportunity to speak.
Yeah, that's fine.
So, just to be clear on this, Councillor Ebert's motion that we're debating is that we go out and seek input.
Yes.
Well, the recommendation in our book suggests that we seek input and also somehow have a process of education going on.
That's fine.
So it seems to me that the book initially recommends something that's on a two-way street, whereas I believe Councillor Ebert's motion is a one-way street. We're going out to get input?
And a friendly amendment is welcome to add and provide education.
That would be better, certainly more appropriate, because, I mean, I absolutely agree with Councillor McIntosh. If anybody were to support the ban, I don't think they'd have the courage to walk in this room here tonight, whether they're carrying their oxygen tank with them or whatever. Because this isn't, that sort of an issue. This is where the person who is supporting the ban is taking a relatively unpopular position. And I'm really glad that council didn't take the same position, that council had the courage to do what's right based on facts. Because this wasn't just a whim on our part or an emotional a position that we took. This was a reasoned position that we took based on the evidence that the chief brought for us and that the medical officer of health gave us. But what I'm afraid of, even supporting the motion calling for input in education, I think people are thinking this is going to be a referendum, Madam Mayor, and I think somehow we have to make people clear that if there's 1,000 people arguing to kill the ban, that's not going to matter. This is not a referendum, right?
So, friendly amendment first. Are you okay with that piece? Councillor Towndale?
Sure.
Okay, to add the education piece. In response to that, no one is using the word referendum. You're the first one to use it.
Yeah, but
I know.
Zone between the lines.
No. This is about getting information back. Yes, giving information so that we're all on the same page, but we also want to hear from people, and people may have some practical solutions. We can't know that until we ask. So we need to ask. It's about asking. Now, we're not making any promises about any changes here. This is not what this is about. We're elected to make the decisions. So at the end of the day, we're going to make those decisions. This council is going to make those decisions. But it's better to have more information than not from the community. It's just about making a good quality decision. It's not a referendum. Councillor Grant, did you want to speak again?
Yeah, just, I really get upset when I hear, well, that was a mistake, because that's pointing a finger. And it's pointing a finger at our administration, and that's not right. We all had the opportunity, knew this was going to be on to ask for that education ahead of time. So and Vince Lombardi used to say it's only a mistake if it's repeated. So, are lessons learned? Yeah, that's what I'd like to see, rather than pointing fingers and saying, this is a mistake, because that bothers the hell out of me.
Okay. Councillor Gardner?
I'll respond to that and understand when I said we made a mistake. We made a mistake only because we didn't go to the public first before we made. It's got nothing to do with pointing fingers at anybody else, because I want more information on this, and we made a mistake by not going to the public. Let's correct it one way or the other.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Bergeron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to point out, look, I had voted against this, and I got outvoted, and it happens quite a lot at this table sometimes, but the process, we all had the opportunity, even those who voted against it. What I do want to talk about is, I think there's a way to write this bylaw where everybody, including those who have problems, can fit within the constraints of a really well-worded bylaw, and that's what I said last Monday. I think it's an enforcement issue. Enforcement means the bylaw just needs to be written better, as far as I'm concerned. So I encourage everybody that's here, everybody that's not here, everybody that is emailing us to come up with a solution that works, that we can discuss. I am opposed to this. That was clear. Some are not. But without a real solution, without something that kind of bridges that gap, then we will just be talking about the same things. So please, during these consultations, come up with ways that a bylaw can be reworded so that everybody is kind of taken into account.
Any further discussion from council? Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to make one final comment.
Everybody's spoken twice, so it's fine. Go ahead.
Thank you for allowing me to speak again. It's really great to see all the engagement over this issue, but I want to remind everybody, we deal with dozens of really great issues at the council table every meeting. So we wonderful if you could all stay engaged on this issue, of course, but maybe come back to another council meeting, see what we're up to, and what's happening in the city, and what great bylaws we're passing, and the great green initiatives that we're rolling out, because there's some good, and it'd be really great to get feedback on those things as well. So hope to see a full house next time, regardless.
Thank you, Councillor Bao. I have a question around what consultation could look like, and Madam CFO, I'm CIO, I'm going to ask our Public Information Coordinator that question. Ms. Meldrum? So I'm really interested in what public consultation can look like in 2019. So we were throwing around words like open houses, and do we already do that kind of thing, and what could that look like?
So through you, Madam Mayor, we do currently do in-person consultations. We have done recently as the waste management consultations. We also typically do quite a bit of online surveying. Councilor Townendale mentioned that we do some on social media. We also often do a survey monkey. I think an info session could be very useful here because it does allow for that two-way dialogue. We can explain the background of the bylaw while getting the feedback that you're looking for.
Okay. And what about online surveys? That always, how do we collect that information? Is it anonymous? Do we allow for anonymous stuff? Because, Councillor McIntosh and McDonald brought up the fact that some people may feel uncomfortable. Some of us are not comfortable on social media, right? It's kind of it can be a bit wild there. Politicians are pretty used to it, but not everybody is, so we want to make sure that people are comfortable in that place. Is that possible?
Yeah, so through our SurveyMonkey account, we don't take personal information. It does collect an IP address when someone submits their feedback. We don't look at the IP address. We don't do anything with it. They do often have the option to provide an email address if they want to follow up, but that's not something I'm looking at when I'm compiling the data.
Okay. So Chief Wazin, are you comfortable working with Ms. Meldrum and sort of branching out in terms of how you want to do the consultation?
Through you and to you, absolutely. Listen, maybe I need to clarify, right? My job is to ensure that the citizens of the city are safe, and twofold, I need to manage a department appropriately. So I bring issues to council, such as I did in this case. I don't hold copyright on all the great ideas in the world, and I'm absolutely looking forward to, and this is why I like the interaction piece, because it gives me and gives my team an opportunity to sit down with folks and say, listen, here are the issues that we deal with commonly. Does anybody have any ideas on how we can address them? And then we could get into some very interesting conversations about how do we build, and then we would, wean that information and those ideas and bring them back to council.
Thank you. Any further discussion around the table? Councillor Birch?
I just have a quick question about what Ms. Meldrum said. When we collect feedback on the internet, you're saying we don't collect name and address, but when we collect a petition, you must have name and address. Can you clarify why we would do that any differently?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm not sure. I believe there's a requirement to do so for a petition, and we just have not done that through our surveys. Something we can look at.
I think that's unacceptable. I think if you're submitting feedback to the city, you should be a citizen, a taxpayer, whether I'm opposed or against or for, it doesn't matter. I think if we're doing surveys, I want your name and your address. I want to make sure you're a tax-paying citizen of the city of Cornwall.
So, that's a fair comment. I mean, I think that doesn't change how this motion is going to work, but I think that we do have to continue to explore how we get feedback. This is kind of what we want to do to achieve a good best practice, and we still have to figure out how that's going to look, right? So I appreciate your question.
Just a quick comment to that.
Go ahead, Councillor Bennett, and then Councillor Mack.
Instead of maybe asking for a full address, just a postal code, so we'll have at least the neighborhood. That should tell us if they're a resident of the city or not.
Okay. Further discussion around this is going to take place, because there's a real, we have to figure out how we're going to take this information in. I mean, I always favor the in-person stuff, quite frankly.
I like to look in somebody's eyes and have them respond to me. I find that usually encourages really respectful communication. So I like the old school open house, where people, it's hot, the sweat's running down your back, but you're there because you care and you're sure that you're in a safe place and you're going to be able to converse. But of course, we have to factor in the social media, and so we're going to continue to engage with you, Ms. Meldrum, to find the best way to do that. Councillor McIntosh.
Yeah, okay, the fire chief brought something to us and we voted on it. The fire chief did not vote on it. I think the fire chief has taken some really, really unfair criticism, and I think it's not deserving. All he did was bring it to us, we voted. If anybody's to be criticized, it's the 8 people who voted for it. So if somebody wants to take on that thing, the bylaw, it's not the fire chief. He just brought it to us. We had a decision to make, we made it.
Thank you, Councillor Mack. Chief Voisin, you're going to be at those open houses personally in the room,
100%.
and you're okay with that?
I'll be there first and I'll be the last to leave.
Okay.
And I'm absolutely
I'm going to
okay
hold you
with
to that. And then in response to Councillor Mack and Councillor Grant's comments, the only one responsible for all of this is me. I'm taking full responsibility. Me. That's why I called this special council meeting. I know Councillor Abad was saying I should have deferred. I know Councillor Grant. I am the one taking responsibility here. Moving forward, we're going to do proper public consultation. Then it's going to come back to us. We're going to debate the bylaw. We're going to debate that. But for what happened last week and what's happening tonight, I'm taking full responsibility for that.
Your one vote.
I'm taking responsibility for calling this meeting and trying to get this back on track in terms of public feedback. When it comes back to council, then it's us. It's the 11 of us debating. Okay? Any further discussion on the bylaw? Councillor Gardner.
Not on the bylaw, it's to...
Sorry, on the motion.
The comment that Councillor Bergeron made. If I get mail, and it's sometimes you get nasty stuff, if there's no signature on that, it's going in the blue box. So if you have something to say to me, put it in writing and sign it. Otherwise, blue box.
So we're going to continue to get feedback. You all have our email addresses. You're going to continue to do that. I hear that there are petitions out there that are going to be presented, so there are ways for petitions to be presented to us. So we're taking all that information, and we'll continue to take in emails. Yeah, it's better if the emails are signed and respectful. Helpful. Helpful. Any further comment before I call for the vote on this motion? All in favor? Against? Carried. Councillor McDonald?
I would like to echo Councillor Gardner's support of Councillor Bergeron's suggestion. I don't think that simply because something comes to us on social media or through email, or whether it's slipped under your door, that it should be recognized as legitimate argument if it's not signed.
Right.
So if you're not willing to show who you are, don't bother sending your, I mean,
it's interesting. I was talking to the CAO this morning. We were talking about preparing for this meeting, and things have changed quite a lot, even in the last 5 years, in terms of how the public interacts with us and what happens on social media. It's a completely different world. So I think that's a fair comment, and we'll have to discuss how we take some of that feedback. And we're probably going to want to have those conversations sooner rather than later. So
I'd like to make that a motion now that we don't allow anonymity to be introduced as as a source of legitimate argument for a decision we're going to make.
I don't know if I want to entertain that motion now, Madam Deputy Clerk or Madam CAO. Do you think?
I'll wait till the next council meeting if you like, but believe me, I'll do it soon.
Okay.
Because this just happens too often. Somebody says, I heard it on social media. Well, who said it?
Okay. That's fair, Councillor McDonald. If you want to make a motion at the next council meeting or a new business or a notice of motion, we'll proceed that way. I'd appreciate that. Councillor McIntosh, is there anything?
Well, I'm really torn with this one. as I spoke before, people who live beside a neighbor who has an open air fire, they don't want to cause a problem with the neighbor, so they don't want to say anything, so, you know,
Right.
You
Okay,
don't-
well,
you don't
we
wanna
have
go with
time,
that
we
one.
have some time to think about it, and then Councillor Lane will bring back a motion. Councillor Hollingsworth?
Just one point on that, you're
Sure.
perhaps a bit off the beaten track here, but I think that in terms of social media, I don't think that I want somebody's comment from Hamilton affecting what I do here, and I think as Councillor Bergeron has pointed out, my responsibility is to the city and citizens of Cornwall first and foremost. And I think if you're not prepared to kind of tell me where you live, who you are and where you live, then I kind of have to dismiss what you've said, because it's not my job to fix the world, it's my job to try to help fix here. So anyway, we'll save that for...
I sense that we may get feedback from the public on how we deal with social media.
No doubt.
No doubt, no doubt, and it's all fine. Is everybody okay? Do we want a motion to adjourn, or is there any further discussion?
Motion to adjourn.
Councillor Grant, seconded by Councillor Hollingsworth, all in favor? Thank you. You had prime spots there, the two of you. Where's your presentation? I said, are there two new councillors here? I have sore knees. That's okay. You were absolutely